What's on the menu? Tonight we order the bento box with Cyber Shadow. Alright, Cyber Shadow is a side-scrolling action platforming game created by Mechanical Head Studios, published by Yacht Games, and pretty much came out on every platform you could think of, except for, no, it did come out on the Switch. So yeah, pretty much everything, except for phones. It came out on January 26, 2021. It is a single-player game. Like I said, a side-scrolling action platformer, kind of reminiscent of old school, like Ninja Gaiden, Castlevania, Mega Man type of games like that. Just those old school NES games, side-scrolling games that you remember back in the day. So it's very reminiscent of those types of games. But it's a really cool game. I really enjoyed it. But let's go over to Shane. Shane, what did you think of Cyber Shadow?
It's a game.
It is.
There we go. No. I really enjoyed it. It is an old school side scroller, just like you were saying. It's got the original Ninja Gaiden feel, Shinobi thing trying to go on there. It is very much a love of 8-bit that has been made. Those that like the old ones, that still go back and play old games, will love it. Those who have lost their way and only care about graphics, those they shall not be named. They won't like it as much. But I truly enjoyed it. I thought it was an interesting little story. I thought the gameplay was tight. I think you should give it a try. I mean, it's a Game Pass game, and there is no reason not to go. You know what? Let's give her a whirl. What about you, Pat? What's your thoughts?
I would figure if you were being published by a studio called Yacht Club Games, that you would put out something better than this. It needs to be worthy of a yacht club to be published by a company called Yacht Club Games. I'm not into this stuff anymore, is what I've learned. As I've gotten older, I'm not into the pattern recognition games. I'm not into the side-scrolling stuff. Doesn't bother me as much, as long as that it's as long as it's got some type of story behind it. The story in this one was kind of buried. Maybe I didn't get far enough to get any story. So we'll have to see how that plays out if I put a little bit more time into it. But I don't know if that'll happen. I might uninstall it. I'll pretty much be uninstalling it after this podcast, probably. I die a lot. And when I say I die a lot, I died a lot. To the point to where I just was like, I can't keep doing this. It's like running face first into the wall a few times and then going, I'm going to try this about 20 more times before I decide to give up. So I'm not into the platform pattern recognition games. I could do it if it was a little bit more AI driven, but now it's just memorizing the pattern of all the creatures and the robots and all that stuff, and what they move, and so you know how to dodge or jump or stuff like that. That kind of stuff. Russ, what did you think of this one, man?
In the year 2021, we flash back to 1988 and play Cyber Shadow. This is a birth child of Contra and Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden. It's like just this. It's like if they all got together and had a baby, this would be this game. It's basic, but I really enjoyed it. Just for the listeners, I apologize. We have a new cat in the house, and he is deciding to just continue to interrupt the podcast. So, following on with that. I enjoyed the game. I just have that feel of like being sick on a day and staying home and playing Contra all day. It was really good. I enjoyed it just to the point of what it is. I won't put much time into it, but I may play a little bit here and there and keep it installed. I won't be uninstalled. One day I'll come home from work and I'll be like, hey, I just want to try to get through a level, and I'll just sit there and get through a level. But it's not bad. I mean, what's really nice about it is that it's just enough to really be enjoyable. There is some moments there where the dying does get a little bit repetitive, but I enjoyed it for the most part. Nick, what about you, man?
Yeah, I really like this game. I liked it a lot. You know, and like I said, like everyone said, and what I said at the beginning, it reminds me of those old school Ninja Gaiden. You know, those that type of game, just that side scrolling. And it is very pattern um, based with the enemies and even the bosses. You gotta learn their patterns to defeat them. You know, I mean, not every boss is like that. Every boss does have a pattern, yes, but not every boss do you have to die several times to kind of learn the pattern. Some of them are easy and you can just get through them, but most of them you will die a couple of times to kind of figure out, okay. But they are very pattern based, so you'll figure out, okay, I know that this enemy at this point is going to drop that, and they're going to swing back this way, and they're going to jump here, and they're going to do that. So you kind of learn that whole fashion of how the fight's going to go. With bosses, they do have two HP bars. You know, after you get down the first HP bar, you have the second one. And when the second one comes up, they do kind of mix up their pattern a bit. So you got to learn. Usually they'll add something to it. You know, they kind of still have the same pattern, but they might add more projectiles, or they might do something a little bit different. But it's not so different that you got to say, okay, until I get there, this is what I need to do, and now I need to change it out completely. You can still kind of follow that same concept of what you did in the first fight, or the first portion of the HP, but you're just going to add in a little bit extra, or maybe delay your jump or something like that to you know, maybe if they throw an extra projectile or something. But ultimately, I really liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun. I did die a lot, but I had a lot of fun going back and just keep trying. You know, I just every time, I don't know, the levels were fun. They had a really good level design, and I found the levels to be really fun. And so even though I died, I wanted to keep continuing, because every time I continued, I felt like I got further and further until I got to the end. Plus, there are a lot of checkpoints in the levels, so you only have to make it through really a small segment before you're going to hit another checkpoint, and that's really nice. So it's not like you have to start the whole level over again. You have checkpoints strewn out throughout the entire level, so you make it through this little segment, you hit a checkpoint, then it's like, okay, I made it through that, let's do the next one. So that was nice, you know. And it doesn't have you can go back to previous levels. There are some places that you can't get into until you have certain powers, but they're not necessary. You know, unlike a Metroidvania where you can't get to this one area that you have to go to because you need this power, this one is like, hey, you can go back there. There's some stuff. Maybe it's something that increases your magic or something that increases your HP, but you don't necessarily have to go get it. You can if you want. And there's little computer terminals that you'll find throughout the game that you can use to go back to previous levels. So once you get certain skills and certain things to get into those levels. So I think overall it was really fun. There's only 10 chapters in the game. So, you know, I think it took me a couple days. It took me quite a while. There is an achievement to beat the game in 3 hours. So clearly, if you'd probably take a couple playthroughs, but I think if you did it a couple playthroughs, you'd probably get through it pretty quickly. But on your first playthrough, you're probably looking, I think I did about 9 hours altogether to get through it completely. But that's just because I died a lot. At the end, it tells you how much you die. I ended up beating the game, but at the end, it tells you how much you died. I died like 369 times or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a statistic that tells me I don't want to play a game when they decide to tell me how many times that I died.
When they record deaths.
Yeah, when they record
Right.
deaths, you know Nick is going to get the deluxe edition.
Right.
Well, it's
Nick's
not
gonna
as
get
bad
the
as
deluxe
Ghost
edition.
Runner. Ghost Runner would tell you after each stage how many times you died.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that was one stage worth of deaths.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Some of those stages for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
But
I don't know.
I think one thing that saves the game is what you were talking about, Nick, about this progressions on the saves, how you don't really go that far. I think that's probably the only real updated mechanic from, a decade back. And I think that's what saves the game. I think if it didn't have that, maybe I wouldn't like it near as much because I die. And I just think that's probably the best way to keep a old style game from making you want to jump out the window is by doing that, giving that new mechanic of being able to save your game more often. Because
Right.
restarting is crap.
Yeah, if I had to restart it every level from the beginning, that would be a pain. I would probably get tired of having to do a level just with, you're almost towards the end and you die and then you have to start back over at the beginning. Kind of like how the old school games used to be. So
Get
it's
all the
nice
way
to
to the
have
boss,
those.
and the boss kills you.
Right, then you start right back
Yes.
at the beginning. So luckily this game has, and typically this game, I think for every boss, like right before you fight the boss, there's a checkpoint. So you
Yep.
can just, if you fail, you just start right before the boss fight. So
Yeah, that is a bonus to the game of that. I mean, that's the only thing that really keeps you going. A little bit more on the game. It's the sound is very classic. I think I mentioned before when we were just talking, like just like I had flashbacks of Castlevania and like I'm not a big nostalgia game, not a big retro gamer, but for some reason it kind of made me happy. Maybe that's why I kind of like the game. I'm not going to say it's like the best game I've ever played. I'm just saying I enjoyed enough to play it a little bit more. But it was definitely that classic feel. The 8-bit is obvious, that's easy. But then the 8-bit sound, I think that this game does it better than some of the other ones that have come out recently. Like, I mean, as a 8-bit retro game newly made, I think they really balanced the old school feel with what the new, like putting it out on a platform like, the Xbox Series X. So it was good. It was solid.
Yeah. Music definitely makes a game like this. I mean, every game has some sort of a score to it, or melody throughout. But an 8-bit game, I mean, those live in your head forever. I mean, Nick's phone is filled with those things, and he can name off every freaking Final Fantasy, Zelda, you know. But I'll remember the tone, but I'm damn sure not going to remember every game. But that's what a good game does, especially back in the day, man. Those when you walk into the arcade and you hear that, I know that one, Dig Dug. They stick in your head, and that's what this game does. It does give you that really good sound.
Right. I just feel that games like this, I don't know, I feel like games like this are just littered with like cheap ways to kill you, because there's long stretches of where you're like doing something very tediously stupid and they throw in one little mechanic to kind of throw you off. Like when you're running through a zone, especially like, in the beginning when they're trying to teach you, you're running through a zone and you'll encounter your first creature. Let's talk about the very beginning of the game. You encounter your first creature, and the first thing you come across is like one of the little creatures that just kind of walks across. He walks back and forth between the two little built-in pin. Okay, you run across him. Yeah, cool, we got him. And then you run across the plant that moves up and down, and he shoots, and then he moves down and he shoots to keep in line with where you are. And then you learn to kill him. And then you come across this creature that kind of skitters across the screen, and he runs and he jumps and he goes all the way to the other end of the level, and he comes back. So if you don't kill him when he goes by, he'll come back. And then, they introduce a little character that shoots the bombs out of his back, and the 3 bombs. And then you get further on. And then they give you a little flying guy that does the loop-de-loop, And then they'll say, okay, we're going to throw all this at you with the loop-de-loop. Now we're going to throw a turret in there with you. Now we're going to throw in steam grates at the bottom so that you just can't run and do this. So it's like, to me, that's cheap deaths, because it's like, okay, we're just going to keep throwing stuff at you until you can't compensate anymore through a playthrough. And then you're like, okay. And what I've discovered with playing this game is that when it respawns you, so like when you go back to a checkpoint, everything respawns. Everything that you pass and everything that's in front of you respawns. And to me, that's created unique situations with bugs where you will respawn and there'll be a flying critter down below you that has, now he will come into play again, even though you killed him before you came up to the spawn area. And so what I've ran into happening is that he'll come halfway through the floor, and I'm trying to attack him, but I can't attack that low, and he hits me on the foot or something, So I have to kind of like just ignore him, run past him, and jump him. Stuff like that I feel is just like cheap deaths. It's just intended to make you fail,
See,
I don't like that.
I don't think I encountered any situation that was. I mean, yeah, the whole respawning thing, yeah, but I don't think I encountered anything that
Well, if you watch the
really felt like a cheap death. But then again, this is a little more a little more my wheelhouse than it is yours. And that might be why I see it different. But I don't think I ever encountered anything that made me feel like it was a cheap death. Now I did die a lot because my brain and my hands don't work well together half the time. Can't scratch my ass out, get a scab. The but the game never felt like that to me. I mean, Russ, Nick, did you ever felt like there was that spot that was like, oh my god, this is killing me?
I mean, I think what Patrick's really saying is that it's not that it's a bad thing. So I mean, it just depends on how you take. You have a system of pattern recognition. The game is a pattern recognition game, so you recognize all the patterns, and you almost get into I mean, and this may even be part of what the game's about, but you might get lax because you get used to the patterns, and then we had me and Patrick talked about it a little bit. We had some controller issues where we were using the thumb versus using the D-pad, and like turning around or flipping back and trying to swing, and the character wouldn't turn around and swing. I don't know if it was user error or if it was just, those 8-bit games are kind of classic for that sometimes, where you need to turn around and it just doesn't turn around. And so I kind of agree with Patrick with what he's saying. I kind of understand what he's saying in the sense of like, you'll get to a point where you're like, if you don't hit it perfect, like if you don't hit the jump or you don't hit the swing jump or whatever it is perfect, you're going to die every time. There's not much forgiveness on occasion. And not that we as gamers need forgiveness. It's just, hey, I'd like to be able to recover. I mean, that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves in a game is that if I make the error, I like to be able to give the opportunity for me to recover. Hence the reason why Dark Souls and stuff like that is going to be the death of me if we ever have to play another game like that. But point being is I think that's how I feel about it. I mean, Nick, do you see it any other way?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I think the biggest problem I had in the game was really exactly what Shane said, where my brain and my hands were not communicating. Where there were some deaths that were definitely my fault. It was like, why did I do that? Why did I jump then or do something like that? They do introduce some other moves later on in the game. You get a dash ability, which you can, when you're running, you can attack and guy will zip across the screen and do it like a slash. And that has that ability has thrown me into a death because I'll accidentally do it. Now, granted, there is an option. There is an option in the options menu to turn off, because you can dash by one of two ways: either by double tapping right or left or whatever, or you can hit one of the bumpers that will make you dash. So in the options menu, they do give you the option to turn off being able to double tap the left or right to dash, which I didn't turn off, but I probably should have, because I actually used the bumper more than I did the double tap, and the double tap would get me killed a lot. So
right, and I think we talked about this earlier, but like Russ had said, I think the biggest mistake probably was too is using the thumbsticks, because I have an Elite controller for the Xbox. That's what I played it on, and I like my thumbsticks to be loose. I play with loose thumbsticks for the most part. So on my Elite controller, I have the thumbstick tension all the way loosened. So when I'm playing a game, if I pull the thumbstick back and I release it, it snaps back. It's kind of snappy. It's not like hard to pull back. It's loose to pull back. And when it comes back, it has a tendency, when it's standing up straight and you pull it back, it has a tendency to flex a little bit back to the other direction when it releases. That's how I play with my thumbsticks. And so I had to torsion these all the way down to tightness so that it actually takes force to move the stick over. And then when it snaps back, it has none of that opposite recourse effect. And I found that helped a little bit. But it was funny because after we were talking about that, I went and watched the PAX East gameplay where they announced it in 2019. And the guy has the same problems that I'm having in the game. Like when he's fighting the Crusher in the game, the Crusher's in the middle of the screen. He's turned to the right, fighting the turret. And he tries to turn back to the left, and his guy turns back to the right, and he's attacking midair. And that happens to me a lot in the game where I'm like trying to, and maybe it was because I was using the thumbstick, like we were talking about, instead of the D-pad. And I may give it another shot with that. I don't know, but I could tell that whoever was shooting the video for PAX East and me must have been the same guy, because he had like 10 health ticks and I only had the 3 or 4, and he used half of them in the first level. And I'm like, you cheater, So
Right.
I just felt that was the problem I ran into, was my character would never face the direction I was wanting to attack. If I was running left to right, it's side scroller, so I'm going from left to right. I'm attacking stuff on the right side of the screen. Well, if I need to turn around and fight something on the left hand of the screen, I always found that it was at my back, and I had trouble turning around to attack it.
See, that's one thing I just didn't have a problem with, is the controls on it. I did try the D-pad like Nick, but I don't know. I'm just too new school on it, because D-pad to me is a fighting game only anymore. I mean, you throw Mortal Kombat or something, yeah, you got to use the D-pad. But for this sticks worked fine for me. Like I said, most of my issues were my fault, because these don't work too well. But I enjoyed it. I really did.
Well, and and that's the thing, is I never use the D-pad in games anymore. I use it for, like, if you use it to equip a power-up, or, you equip a grenade or something with it, you change weapons. I don't use it for major gameplay anymore. So that's probably, I'm just not used to that type of stuff anymore.
I mean, we're almost trained like that now. We're almost trained not to use the D-pad because of all the new games.
Right. Yep. And one of the things that drove me nuts, and this is just typical platformer side-scrolling games, is that the abilities that you pick up, at least the abilities you pick up like randomly throughout the game, they're only good until you die. And I died way too many to get to keep any of the cool abilities and use them for long enough to do anything with. Because it seemed like every time I got one of those cool abilities, I got a little cocky and would go in and get killed. I'm like, oh yeah, I can now reach further with my sword. I'm just going to swing like crazy. And then I got killed, and I'm like, oh, I started without it, and I can't get it because it's gone now. So,
yeah, that happened to me with that damn yo-yo weapon. It was like, you could take out half a screen with it if you do it right. So I would run, I'd jump up, try to hit everybody through the top part of the screen, I'd try to get everybody in the bottom part, and I'd forget to pay attention to the middle in front of me, and bam, blade to the face. But yeah, you're definitely right there. That does kind of suck, but that is part of the classics. You get boned. There's no contra code for everything. So
right. This reminds me of the old school days where you didn't have saves, and you didn't have continues without pumping more quarters in the arcade. Yep. So
right.
Yep.
Up, down, left, right, A, B, select start.
I think there's only one A-B on that.
Yeah. In any case.
BA, actually.
Yeah.
But regardless, well, for me, when we go back to the sticks versus the D-pad, old school games like this, for the way my brain's wired is I instantly go to the D-pad. That's just how, like, if I see something old school like that, it's the D-pad that I'm going to go to. I don't even know if I use the stick playing this game or even tried to, because my brain was like, no, you're playing an old school, you need to use the D-pad. And so, I'm sure I probably did use the stick at one point just to see how it was, and then went right back to D-pad. But that's how I played this game. I found it much easier for me personally to use the D-pad, but I'm sure, for some people, the stick could be easier. It just depends on your play style. And I, for most modern games, yes, stick is where I go. But for these retro or old school type of games, I always use D-pad. I find it easier to use it. So
yeah,
but
you're hardwired that way, though. I mean, you play a lot of old school games, period. So that's still in your DNA.
Right.
Nick just plays a lot of everything, so
That's
he's
true.
got. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know. I struggle with going from one console to the other, and even from PC to console, because I get so used to like hands on a keyboard and mouse, and I pick up my controller and it's like I forgot how to play a game. I'm like, yeah, or then it always gets me every time I go from like Xbox to PlayStation, and I'm thinking, X and Y and A and B, and now I have to think of triangle, square, circle, and X, and I'm like, oh. X, oh, that's over here. You're just like, And then going from like the Switch back to the Switch, and you're like, oh, A, B, yeah.
That's why on the
it's always
Switch I only
forgetting that.
use the Pro controller because I can't do that transition very well to the little Wiimote things. It's
I don't have a Pro controller.
I don't think
for
my
mine.
thumbs would fit the little controller. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, I can't imagine trying to use that little bitty thing.
Right.
Hopefully I can get the right controller for it.
Yeah, the Pro, or they even got knockoffs of the Pro that are, it's the 360 or Xbox One setup, and it's just fine by my butt.
They're not the Mad Cat style.
No,
Oh my goodness.
but
No
no,
more Mad Cats.
the controls are something that if you're like Nick and you play a lot of OG games, D-pad's the way you want to go. If you're more into it like us, and you're more of a modern player, but you'd like to go back, then the stick. To me, the sticks worked fine. I was just having more problems with myself than anything with the game. So any of my complaints really would be about me.
As a veteran gamer, I refuse to blame myself. It's always the game that's buggy, not me. I am a masterful gamer.
Yep, very first thing I heard online, the very first time I played online, this god dang cheats. No,
That was the reason. That was the excuse behind why you didn't want to play with the third-party controller back in the day.
Yep, exactly.
It's the
It was
controller's
that
fault.
one person,
Yep.
that bulky duct tape controller. This is yours.
The Mad Cat.
Yep.
Yep.
My mom got this one for me, guys.
Yeah, you see the video where you've seen the video online where the guy's like playing 3 players at his house, and they give the one guy the Mad Cat's controller. It's got like the antenna and it's sparking and everything.
Yeah.
It's the control. Don't blame the controller.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and like I say, it probably is just a little bit me. I just don't have the patience. So I don't have the patience to go through and just do pattern recognition and memorization all the time. I'm just like, I want to play a game, get some story, get some enjoyment, and not go through and be like, oh yeah, I forgot that guy does that little move, or I forgot this guy does this weird move, or this thing moves back and forth so far and drops some bombs. I'm like, I just don't want to memorize that stuff right now. I want to play a game, and I've gotten spoiled with AI-based NPC enemies rather than pattern-based enemies, because old school retro games, 8-bit games, anything going back to that side-scrolling homage like Contra and stuff is just learning the patterns. And I prefer more.
It just dawned on me. I think the way to explain it, Patrick, for you is like you like to be able to control your own gameplay. Like if you want to go in stealth on something, you can go in stealth. If you want to go in and hack and slash, you can hack and slash. I think I'm even like that. I think I like the reason why I like newer games is because I could choose the style of gameplay with the techniques and skills that I'm given to be successful or to fail. Like if I fail, I'm like, okay, that was the wrong way to do that. I can go in and be stealthier this next time or something. This, when you come to an old school side scroller, I mean, most generally the pattern is the pattern. That's the whole point behind an 8-bit. So it's like, oh gosh, like heaven forbid if I mess this up just a little bit, then I'm gonna have to start back at the dang last checkpoint, and. Right. I mean that may be some of it. I'm not sure for certain, but I mean I think that might be some of it.
It could be. I don't like having to die 10 times before I finally get that aha moment, or maybe it's a cheesed mechanic where I knew that I couldn't go in this corner, but I had to get away from the majority of stuff, and I just didn't have enough life to survive the onslaught that was coming. Because sometimes, for the most part, everything is avoidable. You just have to play that everything is avoidable, but at sometimes you just have to take the hit of damage to move forward, or you get to the point where what happens to me is I get frustrated and I'll run through a level a few times and I'll get to the point where I'm like, I am so tired of dying, and I just run in swinging, and then I die again and I'm like, you know what, I'm done.
Man, you literally just described my last marriage.
Running in, swinging, and dying.
That's right. But no, you're right. For a lot of people, dying is overly frustrating. I'm okay with dying as long as my dumb butt learns from what I did wrong to die, and that's where the whole brain and hand thing destroys me on especially on a pattern recognition game. Okay, I know what to do. All right, brain, tell your hand. Nah, I ain't gonna do it, and then I die. So that's just it. But overall, on this game, I definitely recommend it.
So, Nick, you said you put 9 hours into it. Do you remember how many times it said you died?
It was 300 and something, 360 something, I think.
Oh my God,
So
that's
was
like
that
30 times. It's like 30.
That's 50
320?
every minute, every hour. You died 50 or 30 times an hour.
32,
times
it'd be about 32 every hour.
times every
Maybe.
That to
every
me is
hour.
just like, I mean, that's what gets to me. It's like, okay, I die, and I
Once
just get
every 2
frustrated.
minutes.
Once every 2 minutes. I would believe it because I'm pretty sure I got like half of that in the first level alone. So after the first boss, I should say, the Crusher, because then it starts ramping up exponentially faster after you beat that first boss.
For sure. They throw a lot more at you as you progress.
Yeah, and they're like throwing a lot more random at you. They're like, oh, we're gonna throw this random turd in here. Now we're gonna throw this flaming pits of fire everywhere. Now we got these little creatures that drop bombs everywhere. Now we got these little things that just shoot constantly in a direction. But what you don't realize, we're going to throw one every now and then. It just goes up and down and he shoots, at you. So
one thing I will say that's annoying is, and I mean, I guess if you want to, it's not really a spoiler. I mean, it's towards the end of this. It's the very last chapter of the game, but it's not really spoiling anything. It's just something that in the level they don't introduce this. They kind of talk about it a little bit, but they don't introduce this mechanic until the very end. So the very end of the game in chapter 10, you have to climb this tower basically. Well, in the game you get this ability where you can do a downward thrust with your sword. You jump up and it goes, and you thrust down. Well, with it you can like use it to bounce off of enemies. So you can get the idea of how they want you to climb this tower. Is there are platforms, yes, but they're spaced out, and then they put these enemies in that you have to basically do that. Now, through the entire game, there's never this type of scenario where you have to utilize that ability. And now they want you to basically use it, and I probably died a million times there. That's probably where half of those came from, because that took me forever to figure out. First off, to figure out how to do that and successfully jump off, because I would do it, and then my guy wouldn't jump. I'd just like fall down, and I'm like, that ain't it. And then I'd hit the, I do the where they hit the enemy and then they kind of bounce up. But what you got to do is you got to hit the enemy, and then you kind of bounce up, and you hit the jump button, and you'll go a little higher. Mm-hmm. And then you could do the downward thrust again. So there are areas where you have to do it multiple times through like 3 or 4 enemies. You have to thrust down, jump off, go to the next one, until you hit the platform. And then, so
I tell you what, I'm so glad that Patrick didn't get to that level, because we'd be reading his obit.
Yeah, his controller would have been in his TV at that point.
No, I mean he probably would have. Yeah, and I mean he burnt down the house. I mean, it would have been terrible. It would have been like, Springfield man loses. Just like that stuff is crazy. I mean, we'll see if I get to that point. But I mean, it's those things though that. I mean, I'm kind of with Patrick in the sense of like I don't want to get back into those kind of things. I don't really want to have that. I love newer feel games, but at the same time, this is a good game to have installed for if you like. I don't know. I mean, for those of you that I mean, even kids. Like, let's say y'all are about to go somewhere with your parents. You have it installed. You play 10, 15 minutes of it right before you leave to go somewhere. You in the morning having a cup of coffee. Those guys like to game. Play a couple of minutes of it before you head off to work. I mean, don't play too much, because if you play too much, you're going to go to work pretty angry. But, other than that, for a Game Pass game, and for the nostalgic feel of it, I'm 100% tell you, like, install it. I mean, it's, even if you get a night's gameplay out of it, it's worth that just because of Game Pass. I mean, this is the game, these kind of games here, we would never buy. I mean, me and Patrick would never buy this game just even if it was on sale for $2.99, it'd be like, no, I'm not getting that. So just to be able to experience it, thanks to the podcast and us kind of like saying, let's do this one. Because it did, for the 4 hours or so that I played, give me a really good feel and like, oh man, I just remember loving these games. I mean, yeah, Contra was one of the most annoying games at times, but it was so cool to beat it. It was so cool to get through it. I mean, it was a little bit fun. I don't know if I'll get through this one, but at the same rate, at least I just remembered being like 10 again, 9, 10 again, being sick from school and saying, and playing some NES,
Well, I think Game Pass is a wonderful thing for these games. They truly are. I mean, it's. Does anybody know what it costs without Game Pass?
It's only $20.
It's only $20. It's
Yeah.
$20
$20
game.
too much.
I think it's a $20 game easy. I'd go.
I think it's a $20 too much game.
I'd even go up to
Glad it was Game Pass.
$21.99.
$21.99.
I wouldn't pay 99 cents for it, but that's just me, not my kind of game. So I'm glad it's on Game Pass because I had to pay for it to play it. So
I mean, like worthiness or whatever of the game. I mean, I would say it's a $7.99 game. I mean, I think it's something like a cell game at $7.99. But the only way I'm playing it is because it's on Game Pass. I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
the only reason I'm playing is because I got forced to play it.
Pretty much. I would have bought it. I would have bought it for $20, but luckily it was on Game Pass, so I can just play it
For our
free.
listeners, it was Nick's fault.
It was my suggestion.
Well, I will say this: Nick is good on game recommendation 99% of the time. We usually know when he's picking a game that I'm not gonna like. I usually do. I look at it and go, oh, and he'll usually make a comment. So Nick's recommendations are usually spot on because he knows what type of gamers we
I
are.
knew Patrick wouldn't like this one, so that's why I recommended it.
He was
and I wasn't
laughing when
quite
he
sure
picked it.
about Russ. I didn't know. I figured Shane might like it, but Russ, I was kind of like, he might or may not. Patrick for sure is not gonna like this one.
I mean,
So let's
I did.
play this one.
I did. I did not. I'm not gonna say I did not enjoy it. It was just enough nostalgia to make me happy. I mean, it's like eating a Twinkie or something like that. I mean, I'll eat one every now and again, every once in a blue moon, just for that nostalgic feeling. But I'm not going back to buying boxes of them.
How dare you compare this to a Twinkie? I'd eat a Twinkie every day, but I wouldn't play this game every day.
I can't eat Twinkies because they destroy me now. So,
Oh yeah, I can't eat them either because I would be twice.
Well, this game would
as big as
destroy
I
you
am.
if you played it every day, though, right?
At least
I'm not a-
destroy
I'm
your
not a big
controller
fan
and
of-
TV.
I'm not a big fan of Twinkies. I'd rather eat Zingers. Those were better.
Okay, one
Frosted Twinkies. Those are just frosted Twinkies with a little
And
bit
they're so
different
much
cake.
better too.
No, if you're gonna eat a damn snack cake, you got to go Chocodile or nothing.
Now this has turned into what you
Chocolate
snack
diet.
on while you game.
Yeah.
Let's just
Save
pull in
it
Star
for-
Crunches.
You got to save that for the dessert
Star
cast.
Crunches. All right. Well,
But-
cool. I mean, anybody else want to give some gems for this game? Anybody else got something that we maybe missed or didn't talk about?
Give it a try. That's
Yeah.
really all I can say. I say give it a try.
I agree. Give it a
If
try.
you have
Yeah.
Game Pass, especially if you have Game Pass, definitely download it and try it out. See if you like
If
it.
you have Game Pass and there isn't anything that remotely brings you of any interest, give it a try because we have found games that are just like, well, this is actually really cool. I'm surprised. I mean, Carry On and what's the one that
Two Crowns.
Two Crowns?
Two
Yeah,
Crowns.
I mean,
Kingdom, 2 Crowns. Yeah.
I mean, I would have never picked it up ever if it wasn't for Game Pass.
Right.
Check it out though; it's a damn
Yep.
good game in my opinion.
Cool.
Good deal.
Well, if you like 8-bit retro side-scrolling platformer games, this is probably right up your alley. And if you are, hopefully you got Game Pass so you can try it out for free. If not, our panel of 8-bit retro gamers tend to say this is a buy at $20. So
Yep.
give it a try.
And
We
let us
appreciate
know what
everybody
you
listening.
let us know what you found on Game Pass that you guys like that everybody should try.
Or about this
Well,
game.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you know, tell us what you thought. If you need to smack Nick around for giving you a bad recommendation, that's up to you too. If you want to tell me
Address-
I'm wrong because
Address
if you
will
want
be
to tell
on
me
the
I'm wrong,
website.
go for it. Yeah. So, well, we appreciate everybody listening to this episode, and we hope to catch you on the next one.